Home Depot and Lowe's have been collecting gardeners' money for decades on the assumption that serious garden supplies require serious retail prices. That assumption just met Aldi's garden aisle. What is sitting on those seasonal shelves right now is not a budget compromise or a cheaper substitute. It is the same fundamental product, the same seeds, the same soil composition, the same tool steel, at prices that make everything in the garden center down the road look like a financial mistake. 9 items. The comparison is not even close. Starting right now. 9. Seed packets. Walk into Home Depot or Lowe's and find the seed display. Take note of the price on a standard packet of tomato seeds, pepper varieties, lettuce blends, or herb collections. That price reflects brand positioning, retail margin, dedicated garden center overhead, and the assumption that a gardener who wants quality seeds is willing to pay for the packaging that signals quality before the packet is ever opened. Aldi's seed packets arrive at a price that undercuts that model on every single variety without exception. Not slightly lower, meaningfully lower, in a range that makes the cost of a failed germination attempt so negligible that beginner gardeners can afford to experiment freely, and experienced gardeners can stock multiple variety options without the cost calculus that limits seed purchasing at premium retail. The quality concern that always surfaces at this point in the conversation deserves a direct answer. Germination rates on Aldi seeds, when planted in appropriate conditions with correct timing and adequate moisture, perform comparably to what significantly more expensive branded packets deliver. The seed inside the packet does not know what the packaging cost. It either germinates under the right conditions or it does not, and the conditions are determined by the gardener, not by the brand name on the outer wrapper. What the gardener does know is that the difference between a successful and unsuccessful germination result almost never traces back to the brand on the packet. It traces back to soil temperature, moisture consistency, planting depth, and timing relative to the local frost calendar. Those variables are entirely in the gardener's control and entirely unaffected by where the seed was purchased. Former Aldi employees with gardening backgrounds describe the seed section as the item they direct gardening friends to first, because the value case is immediate and requires no qualification. You are buying seeds. Aldi has them at a fraction of competitor pricing. The biology does not change based on where the packet was purchased. Home Depot and Lowe's are selling the packaging as much as the seed. Aldi is selling only what goes in the ground. Something even more dramatic is waiting at number 8, and it involves the one garden purchase most people make without ever questioning the price they are paying. 8. Potting mix. Potting mix is the garden purchase that most reliably exposes the gap between what a product costs to produce and what a garden center charges to put it on a shelf. The formulation of standard potting mix across most mid-range products is governed by basic horticultural requirements that do not vary dramatically between brands operating in the same quality tier. Peat or cocoa coir for moisture retention. Perlite for drainage and aeration. Bark components for structure and biological activity. These ingredients cost what they cost, and the price difference between a bag at Aldi and an equivalent bag at Home Depot or Lowe's does not reflect a proportional difference in those ingredients. What it reflects is the retail environment those ingredients travel through before reaching the consumer. Garden centers and home improvement stores carry potting mix as a category anchor, a high-volume consumable that drives traffic and that customers have demonstrated consistent willingness to purchase at premium pricing, because the alternative of driving to a second store feels like more effort than the price difference justifies. Aldi removes that calculation entirely. The potting mix is already in the store where the rest of the grocery shopping is happening. It is priced at a level that makes the home improvement store alternative look like a markup rather than a value. And the performance in containers, raised beds, and seed-starting applications delivers what the price at a garden center would predict for a bag costing significantly more. The bags are on the shelf during the same trip where everything else on the weekly list gets handled. No second stop, no separate garden center visit, no additional fuel cost or time investment to justify the savings. The convenience and the price arrive together. Former employees describe watching customers load multiple bags of Aldi potting mix into their carts on the same trip where they bought produce, dairy, and dry goods, because the convenience and the price together produce a purchasing decision that requires no real deliberation once the bags are on the shelf. If you have not subscribed yet, now is the moment to do it. This channel covers exactly this kind of intelligence every single week. The product comparisons, pricing realities, and garden aisle finds that save real money on every trip. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what is coming at number 7 is the garden item that generates the most disbelief from first-time Aldi garden shoppers. And the disbelief is entirely justified by what the price tag says. 7. Raised bed kits. Raised bed gardening has moved from a niche practice for serious vegetable growers into one of the most mainstream garden projects in American home landscaping over the past decade. And the retail infrastructure that supplies it has responded to that popularity by pricing raised bed kits at levels that reflect peak demand rather than actual material cost. A cedar or composite raised bed kit at Home Depot or Lowe's, even at the entry-level end of the range, carries a price that reflects lumber costs, branded packaging, garden center margin, and the positioning of raised bed gardening as an aspirational lifestyle purchase rather than a straightforward material acquisition. The result is a product category where the price-to-material ratio is among the worst in the entire garden department. Aldi's raised bed kit offering arrives in the garden aisle at a price that former employees describe as producing the most consistent double-take reaction of any garden item in the section. Shoppers who have recently priced raised bed kits at home, improvement stores, and who encounter the Aldi version for the first time reach for the tag, read the number, and then read it again because the gap between what they expected and what they are seeing is large enough to trigger genuine disbelief. The material quality in Aldi's raised bed kits delivers what the application actually requires: structural integrity across the planting season, adequate depth for root development in standard vegetable and herb applications, and connection hardware that holds without requiring additional reinforcement for beds of standard dimensions. The gardener who buys a raised bed kit at Aldi and the gardener who buys a comparable kit at Home Depot end up with the same raised bed. One of them spent significantly more money to get there. The vegetables planted in both beds will grow with equal indifference to which retailer supplied the frame containing their roots. The soil, the sunlight, the watering consistency, and the gardener's attention determine the harvest. The brand name on the assembly hardware determines nothing except the final line on the receipt. That disbelief at the price tag is about to repeat itself at number 6. But this time it involves something every gardener replaces every single season without ever questioning why it costs so much. 6. Watering equipment. Hose nozzles, watering wands, sprinkler attachments, soaker hose sections, and basic connector hardware represent a product category with one of the widest gaps between manufacturing cost and retail price in the entire garden department. These are injection-molded plastic and basic metal components assembled in the same manufacturing environments regardless of what brand name appears on the packaging. And the price difference between a premium garden center version and an Aldi version reflects brand margin and retail positioning rather than any meaningful difference in the materials or the assembly. Home Depot and Lowe's carry watering equipment across a range of price points that starts at modest and climbs rapidly toward premium, with the premium end justified primarily by brand recognition and the visual language of quality built into the packaging rather than by functional performance that a gardener using the product in an actual garden would detect. Aldi's watering equipment enters this category at a price point that makes the replacement cycle financially neutral. This is the specific framing that experienced Aldi garden shoppers use when describing their approach to watering equipment, and it is the framing that makes the most sense given the product's fundamental nature. Watering equipment degrades. UV exposure affects plastic components. Thermal cycling creates microfractures at connection points. Mineral deposits from hard water affect flow consistency over time. These are realities that apply to a $30 nozzle and a $7 nozzle with approximately equal indifference. When replacement is financially neutral, the calculus around watering equipment purchasing changes entirely. Former employees describe Aldi customers buying 2 or 3 watering wands in a single visit, not out of excess, but out of the practical recognition that having a backup costs almost nothing at Aldi pricing and eliminates the mid-season inconvenience of a failed component during a critical watering window. Home Depot is charging premium prices for equipment that fails on the same timeline. Aldi has accepted that reality and priced accordingly. There is also a practical benefit to buying watering equipment at a price that removes financial hesitation from the replacement decision. A gardener who replaces a failing nozzle immediately rather than nursing it through the rest of the season loses no watering days and spends almost nothing to avoid losing them. Forget watering equipment for a moment. What is coming at number 5 is something that stops experienced gardeners in their tracks the moment they see the price. And the reason it stops them is that they know exactly what this product costs everywhere else. 5. Gardening gloves. Gardening gloves occupy a peculiar position in the garden retail ecosystem. They are a consumable, subject to degradation from soil contact, moisture, UV exposure, and the mechanical wear of regular garden work, which means they require periodic replacement regardless of initial quality. Yet the premium end of the gardening glove market at Home Depot and Lowe's prices these consumables as though their useful life is measured in seasons rather than in weeks of intensive use. The specific gloves that command the highest prices at home improvement retailers tend to feature reinforced fingertips, breathable back panels, and snug wrist closures, design elements that improve the wearing experience meaningfully but that do not fundamentally alter the consumable nature of the product or extend its useful life proportionally to the price premium charged for including them. Aldi's gardening gloves arrive in the garden aisle with those same functional design elements at a price that former employees describe as making the home improvement retailer alternative difficult to recommend to anyone who has seen both options side by side. The reinforced fingertip construction handles the contact wear that degrades gloves fastest. The breathable back panel manages the moisture buildup that makes extended garden work uncomfortable. The fit across standard hand sizes accommodates the dexterity requirements of seed planting, transplanting, and fine garden work without the stiffness that heavier construction gloves introduce. The per-pair cost at Aldi pricing makes buying multiple pairs for different applications, one pair for soil and fertilizer work, one pair for pruning and handling, one pair for general maintenance, a financially reasonable decision rather than an extravagance. At Home Depot pricing, that same multi-pair approach requires a budget justification that most gardeners choose not to make. Consumables should be priced like consumables. Aldi understands that. The garden centers do not. The broader implication for any gardener who has been buying premium gloves at home, improvement retailers is straightforward. Every season of premium glove purchasing represents money spent on a brand experience rather than a functional outcome. The hands doing the garden work cannot tell the difference. The wallet doing the paying absolutely can. Before we go further, hit that like button right now. What has already been covered on this list represents real money that gardeners have been leaving at the home improvement store checkout for years. Every item still coming is another opportunity to stop doing that. One tap right now. Because the next 3 items on this list are about to make everything covered so far look like an appetizer. Number 4, number 3, and number 2 are where Aldi's garden aisle stops competing with Home Depot and Lowe's and starts making them look like they are operating in a different financial reality entirely. 4. Hand tools. The hand tool section of Aldi's garden aisle is where the comparison with Home Depot and Lowe's becomes most uncomfortable for the home improvement retailers because hand tools are a category where quality is genuinely detectable at the point of purchase and where Aldi's offering consistently holds up under the evaluation that reveals lesser tools for what they are. The assessment that experienced Aldi garden shoppers apply at the shelf is straightforward. Weight in the tool head indicates steel density and gauge. A trowel, cultivator, or hand fork that feels substantive when lifted is communicating something real about the material used to form the working end. A tool that feels light for its size is communicating something equally real and considerably less encouraging. The connection between the tool head and the handle is the second evaluation point. Lateral pressure applied at the neck of a well-made tool produces no movement whatsoever. The connection is rigid because it was designed and manufactured to remain rigid under the mechanical loads that garden work places on it repeatedly across a full season. A connection that reveals micro movement under hand pressure is a connection that will reveal full movement under soil pressure within weeks. Aldi's hand tools, evaluated by these criteria, consistently produce results that former employees describe as competitive with garden center offerings at 2 to 3 times the price. The steel quality in the working heads, the connection integrity at the neck, and the handle finish and grip all deliver what the application requires without the premium that a branded garden center product attaches for the privilege of carrying a recognized name. Home Depot and Lowe's sell hand tools on the strength of brand recognition and garden center positioning. Aldi sells them on the strength of what the tool actually does when it meets the soil. A trowel that holds its connection under repeated planting pressure, a cultivator that moves soil efficiently without flexing at the neck, a hand fork that separates compacted root zones without bending at the tines. These are the performance criteria that matter in a garden. Aldi's hand tools meet them consistently. That tool comparison already changes the math significantly. But what is coming at number 3 is going to change it even more dramatically because it involves the single highest margin product category in any garden center and the single most dramatic price gap in Aldi's entire garden aisle. 3. Planters and containers. The planter and container category at Home Depot and Lowe's is one of the most aggressively marked up sections in the entire garden retail environment. Ceramic planters, glazed pots, fabric grow bags, composite raised containers, and decorative outdoor vessels all carry prices that reflect the lifestyle positioning of garden retail. The cost of maintaining dedicated indoor display space, and the brand premiums attached to recognized garden lifestyle names, far more than they reflect the actual material and manufacturing cost of what the container delivers. A ceramic planter of standard dimensions at a garden center carries a price that encompasses the cost of the ceramic, the glazing, the kiln firing, the import logistics, the garden center margin, and the retail positioning of the item as a lifestyle purchase rather than a functional garden tool. Each of those cost layers adds to the final price in ways that the planter's actual performance in a garden application does not require. Aldi's planter section strips most of those layers away. The ceramic is still ceramic. The fabric grow bag is still fabric. The composite material is still composite. But the retail positioning, the brand margin, and the garden center overhead do not accompany the product onto the Aldi shelf, and the resulting price reflects that absence in ways that are immediately visible to any shopper who has recently looked at planters at a home improvement retailer. Former employees describe the planter section as the single most consistent source of price shock reactions in the entire garden aisle, specifically among shoppers who arrive at Aldi having recently visited a garden center and who encounter a visually comparable product at a price that makes the garden center visit feel like a mistake in retrospect. The fabric grow bag comparison is particularly striking. Grow bags have become a genuine and widely used container gardening tool for vegetable growers who understand their drainage and air pruning benefits, and the specialty garden retail pricing on quality grow bags reflects both their functional advantages and the premium market that has developed around them. Aldi's grow bag pricing reflects only the cost of the canvas and the stitching, producing a per-bag price that makes scaling up a container garden from 4 grow bags to 12. A financially trivial decision rather than a meaningful budget commitment. If you are scaling a container garden, building a patio garden, or simply replacing containers that did not survive the winter, the planter section of Aldi's garden aisle is the first place to look and the last place you will need to go. Now pay close attention, because what is waiting at number 2 is the item that professional gardeners and serious hobbyists specifically drive to Aldi to find. And the reason they make that specific trip tells you everything you need to know about what the home improvement retailers are getting away with charging for it everywhere else. 2. Perennial plants. The living plant section of any garden center operates on a margin structure that most gardeners have never stopped to examine, because the purchasing experience of buying a living plant is driven by the immediate visual appeal of what is in front of them rather than by a comparison of what that plant should cost, given its size, variety, and growth stage. Home Depot and Lowe's price perennial plants at levels that reflect their position as destination garden purchases. items that shoppers make a specific trip for and that carry the implicit premium of being available at a dedicated garden retail environment with trained staff, display infrastructure, and a selection broad enough to justify a special visit. That positioning costs money, and the cost shows up in the per-plant price. Aldi's perennial plant pricing removes the destination premium entirely. The plants arriving in the seasonal garden section are sourced through the same wholesale horticultural supply chains that serve garden centers, because the wholesale plant market is not segmented by which retailer is buying. The difference is entirely in the margin structure applied between the wholesale price and the shelf price, and Aldi's margin structure produces a per-plant price that makes the garden center alternative difficult to justify for any variety that Aldi currently has in stock. The perennial distinction is the critical factor that experienced Aldi garden shoppers weight most heavily when standing in front of the plant section. An annual purchase at Aldi's lower price still requires repurchasing the following season. A perennial purchased at Aldi's lower price returns year after year, which means the per-season cost of that initial Aldi purchase decreases with every subsequent season the plant returns, spreads, and fills the space it was planted in. Former employees describe experienced gardeners arriving at the plant section with a clear list of perennial targets, selecting with efficiency and moving on, because they have already done the math on what those plants will cost per season over a 5-year horizon. And the Aldi pricing produces a number that makes the garden center alternative look like paying for years of plants in a single transaction. Buy perennials at Aldi once. Watch them come back. Calculate what that return costs per season over 5 years. Then, try to justify the home improvement retailer price for the same plant ever again. What is sitting at number 1 has been quietly sitting in Aldi's garden aisle every season, generating less attention than it deserves and more savings than most gardeners realize until someone stops and explains exactly what they are looking at. 1. Soil amendments and fertilizers. Soil amendments and fertilizers represent the most quietly significant value gap in Aldi's entire garden aisle, and they are also the least visually compelling products in the section, which is precisely why most beginners walk straight past them, while experienced gardeners fill their carts. Bone meal, blood meal, garden lime, slow-release granular fertilizer, compost accelerator. These are the products that determine what happens to everything else a gardener plants, buys, and tends across the entire season. Seeds that germinate into soil with the wrong pH structure never reach their productive potential regardless of variety or growing conditions. Plants fed on a consistent, slow-release nutrition program outperform identical plants in unfed soil by margins that make the cost of the fertilizer look negligible against the output difference it produces. Home Depot and Lowe's price soil amendments and fertilizers at levels that reflect the product knowledge required to sell them effectively, the specialized display infrastructure they require, and the brand premiums attached to the major fertilizer lines that dominate the garden center shelf. The result is a product category where the retail price is among the highest relative to manufacturing cost of anything in the garden department. Aldi's soil amendment section delivers the same fundamental chemistry at a price that former employees describe as the clearest example of the store's pricing philosophy applied to a garden product. The nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium ratios that determine a fertilizer's effect on plant growth do not change based on which retailer sold the bag. The calcium carbonate in garden lime produces the same pH adjustment in acidic soil, regardless of whether it came from a garden center display or an Aldi seasonal shelf. The critical piece of timing knowledge that distinguishes experienced Aldi garden shoppers from everyone else when it comes to soil amendments is availability. These products arrive on the garden pallet, and they do not get restocked when they sell through. Former employees describe the amendment section as the highest priority stop on any garden aisle. Visit specifically because it is the section most likely to be depleted before the next delivery arrives, and the section where a missed purchase means paying significantly more somewhere else, with no Aldi alternative until the following season. Pros scan the amendment section first on every garden aisle visit. They buy in quantities sufficient to cover the season when they find what they need. They do not return for more because they understand that more is not coming. Home Depot and Lowe's will have amendments in stock all season at premium prices. Aldi has them now, at the price that makes those premium alternatives look like a choice no informed gardener would make. None of this requires a special membership, a loyalty card, or a home improvement store credit account. It requires showing up at Aldi's garden aisle before the window closes. Thanks for watching. Tell us in the comments which one of these is going on your list for the next garden season. Click the next video showing on the left right now to keep building the garden intelligence that saves real money every single season. We will see you there.